Gabe got into it honestly about like what Penny Dreadfuls are and what kind of like the story of Sweeney Todd was. Some of my section is dedicated to that, but I'm kind of gonna scrap that and kind of just get into some fun facts that I found in regards to this. So as Gabe said, you know, this is in the 19th century. They did a great job playing on people's fears. It was based on The String of Pearls, a domestic romance created by Thomas Prest. And I was trying to find out if like there was like a real Sweeney Todd. Like, did that guy exist? Like, did the Benjamin Barker dude exist? Is it based on anything real? And an interesting fun fact that I'm not sure is true or not, but it was on the internet, so here we are.
You can't lie on the internet.
Yeah.
I quoted Wikipedia earlier. You're allowed.
Yeah. So I found something on historythings.com that was fun. It was fun. It was written by someone named Hannah. They did not list their last name. I don't know if that bodes well. But it claims that there was a real barber in France that went into business with a local baker, similar to this situation, to boost their business. And this article is titled, Meet the 14th Century Barber Who Inspired Sweeney Todd. Specifically in the 14th century Paris, France, a baker who made meat pies thought that, like, brought people in from, like, all over France, like, all over Paris. And they were like, these meat pies are A1, 10 out of 10, would come here again. We don't care if they're humans. It's kind of like, honestly, the vibe. And so it was a very interesting situation because I guess this was happening enough that, like, people kind of suspected that the barber was sus. But they didn't, like, specifically seek to investigate them, which I found very interesting. It sounded as if there was a stray dog who was super interested in their bakery and the barbershop. And it was like trying to get in there. And it was apparently this man who now ran the barbershop had like run away and left his dog behind. And this dog found him at this barbershop, and the police were like, that's weird. That dog really wants to get in there. And they were investigating, trying to find the owner, and instead found the bones and remains of humans underneath of the barber and baker shops, and that found out that they had been in business together where, similar to the film, Sweeney was murdering, Baker was like, heck yeah. And they essentially made meat pies out of this because of the literal fact for 3 years. 3 years. 3 years. So many years of human being served on the streets of Paris. And apparently, like, it was as corrupt enough that, like, when they found out about this, there was enough people doing it, like a whole cannibalism town, essentially. They were kind of like in on it. They were like, it's good for business. Don't question it. Literally eat these people. It's fine. Because they had essentially been murdering tourists, people who were not from France, because they considered them easy targets, but essentially burned down multiple other buildings as well, because it had been like ingrained in the local population that like that was a thing that they were working together and benefiting from. The two men were burned at the stakes for their crimes, and because of the other people, their like businesses were burned as well. You can apparently visit the site in a Parisian police department motorcycle garage. Interesting. It is claimed, however, that this could be possible. Like, this happened in the 14th century, which was before the Penny Dreadful was written. But oftentimes, the people writing Penny Dreadfuls would like kind of look to local news and like read local papers to kind of get inspired for the stories that they were telling. And it's interesting because this story was very effective back then, but it was also very effective like today. Like, I think part of it is because of the big names, but also because, as Gabe was saying, there's like this intersection with horror and musicals and like horror and plays that like lended itself very well. And honestly, people don't give enough credit to like horror books, like as a media. So the Penny Dreadfuls were so popular because, one, they were a penny. They were available to like the working class population. There was like a growing increase in like literacy for the working class. So they needed to start to create, and because of the printing press, were like able to create more reading materials, and the quality of those reading materials didn't really matter so much. They're kind of just like stories for people to enjoy, but they often featured really scary things. And for comparison, the cost of A Penny Dreadful was 1/12 apparently of that of a Charles Dickens novel. So it was like a more accessible horror story time for like people who did not have a lot of extra expenditures and wealth.
It's like an escape, even though spooky escape.
Yeah, and it's they were filled with like really scandalous stories, like spooky stuff of things, often including murder, kidnapping, poison, theft, other things that were especially gruesome. And in an article from the BBC Culture titled "The Shocking Tale of the Penny Dreadful," it classified them as our modern day equivalent to like shoot 'em up video games and video nasties, as Gabe mentioned. But you know, for like 1800s. Basically, as this kind of developed, the shift in which they were like representing shifted as well. So you had like at the onset, it was more focused on the perpetrators of the murders, what made someone capable of that kind of thing. And then in the 1860s, apologies, the perspectives shifted more from the pursuers more to the pursuers instead of the murderers. So the British Library outlined Penny Dreadfuls on their page, noting a shift in Jesus Christ, I can't words today either. 1865, where a 70-part Penny Dreadful featured the boy detective, The Crimes of London, and it had a hero named Ernest Keene who runs away from home and works as a police investigator. So it was kind of shifting. Interesting enough, it seems like that was kind of the shift when there was like this cultural building around justice and like heroes and ultimately like kind of glorifying law enforcement instead of like how we see in Sweeney Todd, where it was kind of like calling out the flaws within law enforcement, within judges, within like the judgment in which the rich put down onto lower society. And it's honestly very interesting because I was saying, like, in the beginning, I really resonated with Sweeney Todd's character because one of my favorite lines is there's a hole in the world, like a great black pit, and it's filled with people who are filled with poop, and the vermin of the world inhabit it. And then he goes on and he's like, they all deserve to die. We all deserve to die. We're all parasites. We all just like kind of hurt the world. And for those, there are two types of people: the people who are like have the foot in the face, like pushing down another person, and the person who is on the receiving end of that foot. And like essentially we all kind of want to die because life is hard and horrible. And there's nothing really overtly positive going on with poverty and everything that's happening. And as you were talking about, Gabe, like the price of meat, the price of existence, this kind of growing need for money as a means of survival in this very like divided nature of rich people, poor people. So it was interesting because I really did resonate at first because I'm people are trash. Like that's 100%. That's the thesis of our show ultimately. And although we never want murder to be the result of the people are trash time, or like overt violence, but it's ultimately like I was like vibing at first, and then I was like, oh no, this is different.
Well, because it wasn't revolutionary. Like, he wasn't trying to, like, change what it was. Like, he didn't want to change the system and solve the problems. He just wanted to exact revenge and to kind of satisfy his own need for vengeance. And so it was a very selfish desire. Yeah. So it kind of loses the motive there when it's less about, like, we need to rise up as people and, like, fight against them. It's just like, no, there's two types of people, and I want to be the boot.
Yeah, ultimately.
100%.
And I think that's like a pretty clear like reflection, honestly, on like white people. Ultimately, like they want to benefit from the time, and they're willing to murder and do bad things to receive that. And then ultimately, like when it's time to fix the problem, they're like, that sounds hard. I'd rather like just continue to benefit / also murder, if I have to.
Yeah, well, it's like if we change the system, then I can't benefit from it when I eventually get there, which is like, you know, the American dream and all the problems with that. So and I think that's what it was he was wronged for no fault of his own. And and again, like I said before, it's not like he or Mrs. Lovett had any ability to change the world that it was, like the structure. Like that really was honestly the only answer. Like it was either he just get over it and live in filth and they just kind of do that until they die, or he does something that kind of makes him feel better for a minute and he has to keep doing that and keep burning those bodies and feeding them to other people.
Yeah, and I think, like, it's interesting because I feel like there has to be some sort, like, there had to be some people who were like, this is messed up. We need to join together and murder some stuff. But we don't really get to talk. We don't get to hear about that.
There's, like, unions. Like, the birth of unions and the ability to, like, protect workers and all of that was, like, popping up during that time. But it's, like, that's not what this story is. The story is, like, a guy who was, you know, in prisons in the 1840s, like, is, like... probably was sent to, like Mike was saying, like, probably Australia, because that was where they were just dumping people at one point. And he was just gone for forever, supposedly, like, they thought he would be gone forever. He came back changed, and that's why his character looks dead. Honestly, he is. He, like,
came back from the dead and is, like, out here just trying to feel something again, I guess. I don't know.
I don't even know if that's the case.
Yeah, I don't think maybe that was the goal. And I know it's just, like, really interesting, I think. Like, just the whole story, I think it definitely is still relevant today in the fact that we are within the society that we are. We actively are having, like, situations where, like, workers' rights are kind of coming into play, and the lack of them, rather. It was interesting because I was going through and I was really trying to find instances of restaurants. And I don't know, but, like, that's probably not where my focus should have been. But I was interested. I was like, there seems to be enough of a fear for this, specifically, like, oriented around, like, the trusting an institution that you pay money for to not wrong you. And I think, like, the representation of this film does, like, kind of showcase that in that, like, this is instances where if you're going to a barber, this is, like, a time before electric razors, you couldn't get, like, a clean shave unless you had someone with a knife literally to your throat, and there's a vulnerability there. You have to trust that person not to decapitate you right there. So there's, like, that anxiety that kind of went behind it. But then there's also, like, this... instance of people are scared that the quality of the food that they're paying for, like, in this, thinking of this time when, like, good food was not as readily available. And they started to try to, like, find, like, restaurants were starting to become a thing. You had meat pies ultimately at these restaurants. So they're trying to, like, trust somebody with, like, providing them with sustenance. And I kind of figured there had to be more instances of restaurants serving human meat without people knowing about it or without consent. And there really weren't. Like, they were like...
That's a relief.
Yeah, it's a relief. It might just not be on my Google. I don't know. I also think it's probably going to be like, Kat, what have you been Googling? That's weird.
Yeah.
Don't do that. But yeah, it was like, I really couldn't find anything, and that's definitely good. There were, like, one or two, which is too many, ultimately. But, like, it was also, like, not in the places I would expect it to be. Because I don't know, it's like I would be like, I would not be shocked if it happened here. Wouldn't.
Well, it's also like thinking of when food is so hard to come by and we have to, like, make do what's there, like with them feeding the cats. It makes me think of, like, Snowpiercer, where, like, the black pods or whatever they were eating were bugs.
100%.
And it's, like, so disgusting to think, like, oh, that's what it is. And it's because, like, how else are we gonna feed you? Or, like, Soylent Greens. Like, we gotta do something. We're really desperate for food, and you don't have the resources, so we give them whatever. And that's, like, you know, another conversation of, like, the food deserts of cities and, like, how we don't have fresh food and gardens and the produce that could be affordable and easily accessible, and so we resort to food that's bad for us, and it's not other people or bugs, but it's still not good. And so it's just like, it's a natural fear to question what is given to you when you don't have a choice.
Yeah, and that's ultimately, I guess, like why the seizing the means of production, which is like written about in a lot of the trying to break away from capitalism texts, in that, like, you know, if we knew how to garden, if we knew how to take care of ourselves, like that would give us a lot of power back. And that's what honestly, like, we see a lot of like younger people doing nowadays, is like realizing that the powers that be are not going to take care of us. That was never their goal. And trying to find sustainable living options that can be trusted.
There's some really good co-ops and organizations from people of color, Black, Indigenous as well, who are working to change that and put that back into the hands of the people to be able to control it, and like addressing that problem specifically. Which we can have as part of our show notes.
Yeah, for
so
ways
make sure
to
you
help.
check that out for ways to help. You can check out our blog for those sources as well. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and that you watch our newest film, Jolly Butcher, which came out 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And hopefully you enjoy it. Let us know what you think. And you can always email us at theghouls@gmail.com with any questions, comments, concerns, thoughts. If you think things are cool, you can also comment on our YouTube channel. We love that. We talk back. It can get pretty entertaining sometimes. But yeah, I think this is a really fun series. I think we have one more episode. Waiting to hear back from our special guest. But then we're going to start a new series soon. But so that retires horror musicals for now.
Yeah.
But I would love like a future in which we actually go to horror musicals instead of like watching films about them and then have an episode about them.
Yeah, like have a new one
like
that's
this,
like, this is actually
like
horror music. Like we went to the
stage.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We
that
paid
would
the
be cool. Maybe
$60.
obviously, when it's the future and it's safe and money is easier to have.
Yeah.
And we're not at the point where we'd maybe eat people. So thank you so much for listening or watching, and please do not eat babies or full-grown humans or any in between, or the old ones. I know it's like reuse, recycle, whatever, but not people, okay?
Yeah. Don't resort to cannibalism.
Yeah.
Think critically.
Cannibalism.
If I, go into stuff with your media analysis classes on.
Media analysis headphones when you listen to songs that say stuff like, walls can't hide you. And I'm at your window. And don't be like, that's romance. Okay, Edward Cullen, I'm looking at you. I was sleeping. Don't come in here.
Yeah. This is not a space welcome to you. God.
Yeah, you gotta ask permission, dog.
Yeah.
Okay, well, don't get married.
They'll eat your kids or serve them up on platters of meat pies.
Silver platters. Yeah, this is a really they'll eat your kids episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh, look at that.
They'll eat you, your kids, whatever.
Yeah, someone's gonna eat.
Or your kids will eat you because they don't know you're in the pie.
Yeah. Like Donner Party, they had to label them.
Oh, God.
So you wouldn't eat your own dad. Yeah, that was a time. Anyway.
Okay.
With that being said, bye.
Yeah, bye.